Krishna. Welcome, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. As everyone is streaming in, we'll let the rest of the stream in. And since we're already a minute past 17, we'll go ahead and begin. And my name is Doa Gauranga-Das. I'm glad to be here. And I'm just here to welcome and introduce His Holiness Chandramauli Swami. We're so glad that you're here with us this morning, Maharaj. Thank you for giving us your time and your wisdom. For those who may not know, His Holiness Chandramauli Swami is a disciple of His Divine Grace, ACBSP Swami Prabhupada, been steadily practicing Krishna consciousness since 1973, when he met devotees right here in New York City, for those of us who are here in New York City. And he's been, in 1986, he was awarded the Order of Sannyas and became involved with ISKCON prison ministry, visiting prisoners and holding programs in jails, along with regularly writing letters to inmates and sending them Srila Prabhupada's books. He's now the leader of ISKCON's prison ministry, and his dedication to the welfare, growth, and sustainable rehabilitation of these prisoners has culminated in the book Holy Jail. In over 30 years of operation, the lives of hundreds of inmates have changed due to the practice of Krishna consciousness support received by devotees. Maharaj is also known for his glowing and wondrous, illustrious smile and his beautiful dancing, which we don't get to see as much these days because we're all in different places. But he has such a joy and innocence of heart and a deep wisdom in the practice of Krishna consciousness. And so we're so glad that you're here with us, Maharaj. And without any further ado, we'd like to turn the microphone over to you and hear from you the wisdom of Srimad-Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Om Agyan Timidandasya Gyanajana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Ma Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swami Ti Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gaurarani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastyatya Devi Satarine Panchakalpa Tarubhischa Kripa Sindhu Pevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namoho Namaha. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 9, Chapter 18. We'll be doing verses 3 through 5. Pitara Brahmasate, Pitari Brahmsite Stanam Indrayan Darsana Dvijay Prapite Jagadra Tvam Vai Yatatir Abhavam Nipaha. Translation: because Nahusha, the father of Yayati, molested Indra's wife Sachi, who then complained to Agastya and other brahmanas, these saintly brahmanas cursed Nahusha to fall from the heavenly planets and be degraded to the status of a python. Consequently, Yayati became the king. Chhatrasri Vyadisha Dikshu Bratrin Bharata Vyavi Yasaham Kritadaro Jago Purvim Kavyayas Vipsaparvanaha. Translation: King Yayati had 4 brothers whom he allowed to rule the 4 directions. Yayati himself married Devayani, the daughter of Sukracharya, and Samista, the daughter of Visaparva, and ruled the entire earth. Sri Raja Ovacha Brahmasir Bhagavan Kavyaha Shatrabandhus Chana Husaha Vajayam Viprayo Shamad Vivaha Pratilomataha. Translation: Maharaj Parikshit said Sukracharya was a very powerful Brahmana, and Maharaj Yayati was a Kshatriya. Therefore, I am curious to know how there occurred this Pratiloma marriage between a Kshatriya and a Brahmana. Purport: according to the Vedic system, marriages between Kshatriyas and Kshatriyas, or between Brahmanas and Brahmanas, are the general custom. If marriages sometimes take place between different classes, these marriages are two types, namely Anuloma and Pratiloma. Anuloma, marriage between a Brahmana and a daughter of a Kshatriya, is permissible. But Pratiloma, marriage between a Kshatriya and a daughter of a Brahmana, is not generally allowed. Therefore, Maharaj Parikshit was curious about how Sukracharya, a powerful Brahmana, could accept the principle of Pratiloma. Maharaj Parikshit was eager to know the cause of this uncommon marriage. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So it's interesting here. This appears to be a very mundane topic, matching up boy and girl according to Varners. But it's
Hare Krishna. It looks like Mars's Zoom froze. Hopefully he'll be right back with us in a moment. Apologies.
Recording in progress.
Okay, he's back. Welcome back, Marj.
did we miss a lot?
No, just a minute or two ago.
Okay, so King Yayati is understood to be
only a Kshatriya, but he is a more or less a Rajarsi. He actually is a saintly king.
Okay. Lost him once more. No technical difficulty. Thank you all for waiting. Apologies.
Recording in progress.
There you go. Welcome back, Marj.
I'm wondering why that's happening, but anyway.
Can we use this? Disconnect.
I have a devotee here wants me to switch computers, so let's see. I think this may do the trick.
Okay.
We're on there.
One minute here until we plug in. Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, Marj, we can hear you.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. So one of the principles of a good marriage, and it's mentioned in the Srimad-Bhagavatam in detail in the third canto, is to match up according to nature and liking. When a boy and a girl, according to Vedic culture and the system that designs marital arrangements, there should be a similarity in nature. That means a particular quality. So we see here that the natures appear to be opposite. It seems to be permissible, as it's mentioned, when the Brahmana is a man and the Kshatriya is a lady, but when it's vice versa, we have somewhat of a discrepancy in the natures. That is accordingly not permissible according to the Vedic system of arranging marriages. And so Maharaj Parikshit is curious, why is that? And the other principle is nature and likings. Let's talk a little bit about the present day situation. Likings means similar goals in life. In this case, sometimes we see it in our Krishna conscious society, people are matched up because of physical attraction. This we see quite normally. People become physically attracted to each other. Now, from the psychological point of view, and it's also mentioned in scripture, it's just mentioned in purports, not so much in scripture, that physical attraction has a tendency to wear off anywhere from 2 to 3 years. And so that is not the foundation for establishing a relationship between a man and a woman. The actual foundation is similar likings and nature. So we have a contradiction here in the nature. But somehow or other, that can be overshadowed, or what we say dispensed with, if both of them are practicing Krishna consciousness. Of course, there has to be a little bit of effort in that way. I'm just thinking of a little bit of a anecdote that happened with Srila Prabhupada when he was giving a marriage ceremony. He was doing the fire yajna, and Prabhupada was also doing the part of actually igniting the fire and adding the ghee and the wood to the fire. And it was quite humorous that the fire would not light, and Prabhupada would continue to make his effort to light. And finally, after failing to light the fire, and finally he got a little bit of a spark and things started to pick up. Prabhupada very, I guess you might say it was a kind of a little bit of a humor. Prabhupada said, this marriage will have a slow start. Of course, you don't want to hear that on your marriage day. But somehow Prabhupada wanted to make a point. So these things are foundational, because we see in our Bhaktivinoda Thakur makes this point in the Chaitanya Shikshamrita, that if there's too much disturbances on the material platform, it becomes too difficult for one to practice Krishna consciousness properly and with the determination that needed to engage in the devotional activities. So there should be some foundation in one's material life in order to what we might say, make the step towards Krishna consciousness more natural and more easy. You might say, well, it'll take a greater effort in Krishna consciousness. In other words, there has to be a stronger desire in that area if the material is there. But we see people get disturbed by finances or by relationships, and that seems to upset one's execution of devotional service. So therefore, that's why the Vedic system is aligned in such a way as to match according to nature and liking, and that will give that foundation a solid beginning in the execution of one's devotional service. So, and Grihastha Ashram is one of the, especially in our Krishna Consciousness Society, it is the foundation for establishing Varnashram, and it's also important because the majority of our devotees in the Krishna conscious movement will enter into the Grihastha ashram. The proportion is, when we saw Krishna consciousness develop in the early years of the movement, most of the devotees were living in the temple. And gradually, as time went on, marriages started to take place, and Prabhupada was accommodating devotees living in the temple at that time. But then there was a need to somehow or other support family. Then children were on the way, and then it became a necessity to develop a house and some finances. So then devotees started to move out and establish that. And then, of course, as our society grew, we see now today, after 50 some years, the majority of our devotees are engaged in the Grihastha ashram, and the minority, and not only minority, but a small minority, those who are in the sannyas order of life, those who are in the brahmacharya, make up a very small percentage of the amount of devotees in our society. So you can see the importance of this, although it's material and it's part of the varnashram system, it's foundational, and that devotees go through the process of understanding how to accept a partner in Krishna consciousness based on these principles of nature and liking. And this is foundational. Sometimes we use astrology, and astrology is given some importance, and that helps to understand nature. Liking can also be found a little bit within the astrological observation. But ultimately, what works when devotees get married or about to get married is the blessings and permission from the great souls. In other words, the spiritual masters are those who are situated nicely in the Grihastha ashram and engaged in devotional service. Their blessings and their observation can help people make a decision on how to accept or not accept the role of a husband or wife within the Krishna consciousness society. This might sound a little material, and it is in one sense, but it is necessary, as we say, in order to establish a smooth exhibition of Krishna consciousness. So this has to be understood carefully. Unfortunately, our society, since its beginning, has a very low percentage of successful marriages. Now, Srila Prabhupada, when he started the movement, he did something that his position as the spiritual master of the entire movement and the founder Acharya at the same time was outside of his, what we say, recommended duty. And that is, he took the position of arranging the marriages and also performing the yajna. Now, for him, that was a little bit of a side thing that he did because he knew his disciples needed that kind of guidance and care, and so he did it. But after 3 years of seeing how devotees were not accepting the responsibility of Grihastha ashram, he said, "You're not taking it serious." So Srila Prabhupada stopped playing that role. He still gave advice, but he no longer did the yajnas. So this is very much important. And sometimes devotees struggle on the personal level. But Krishna consciousness is designed in such a way as that any problems that come up within Grihastha ashram, once the marriage is established, can be solved by the principles of devotional service. Otherwise, we find that we get involved in seeing things in a limited way, because the goal of life is ultimately to become Krishna conscious. And the relationships we establish have to be based on the principles of servitorship. One very senior devotee was counseling a wife and a husband who had some difficulty. They came to him for advice. And very simply, he wanted to explain the consciousness that is needed in order for your relationship to develop. And he said to the husband, and he said, you should understand that you are the servant of your wife. And then he turned to the wife and he said, you should understand that you are the servant of your husband. So this is our position, Jiver Surubai Krishna Nityadas. Our fundamental nature is to serve. And in the relationships that we develop in Krishna consciousness are also based on the same principle of service. Service, not only service, but service to please. So after hearing this instruction and a few other basic principles, they went home. And guess what? They started to fight again. And what was the fight about? Well, one was saying to the other, didn't you hear Maharaj? He says, I'm your servant. No, he said, no, I'm your servant. So they kept pointing to each other, pointing the finger that you are actually the servant. So they got it backwards. So if we have that consciousness in everything we do, we play the role of a servant, no matter what role we're in, whether it's a sannyasi or a temple president, yatra leader, a leader in the family, a father. Everyone has to understand the principle that makes the relationship develop, and that is the mood of service. As soon as that is lost, then we get onto the material platform, and then when difficulties come up, we don't understand how to deal with them. In the mood of servant, one can understand more clearly when obstacles come up in devotional service. And obstacles are always there. This is the material world. No matter what situation you find yourself in, there will always be obstacles. And Krishna allows these obstacles to happen for his devotees. Why? In order to purify them from some material attachment, to awaken some transcendental knowledge, or to help them understand clearer how to engage in devotional service. So the obstacles for those engaged in devotional service are sometimes seen, and not only sometimes seen, but most of the time seen as opportunities to make advancement in devotional service. When Prabhupada was asked, because there's an old saying, it's a very mundane cliche, which says that every cloud has a silver lining. So that means that a cloud appears to be an obstacle or a blockage or something that interferes with one's progress in devotional service or in life in general. But their silver lining means that there's something good that will happen if one continues in the right direction. And so when Prabhupada was asked that question, he responded, no, that is not always the case. But for devotee, yes. For people in general, no, because people in general can't see how to solve the problem, and they just continue to go in the same direction. But devotees know that depending on Krishna and getting advice from persons who can give advice, generally those who are either in the role of spiritual master or someone who is established nicely in Krishna consciousness, then one can move forward in these obstacles in Krishna consciousness. So we should never be discouraged by obstacles. And it's not a cause to break relationships. In fact, it's a cause to strengthen relationships. And that has to be given a chance. So we see here in this particular situation, we don't really know until we actually go farther into the Shastras why the reason was of Sukaracharya apparently digressing from his position as a Paka Brahman and allowing his daughter to marry a Kshatriya, and you'll see as we go on into this particular, there was problems because Yayati married also Sarmista. And Sarmista was also she was a Kshatriya. So Devayani and Sarmista couldn't get along. And they were constantly fighting. At one point, Sarmista took Devayani and threw her in a well without any clothes on. And so we see how sometimes in strict Vedic culture that the roles that people play, if they're overshadowed, then there also causes disharmony. But on the spiritual level, one has to somehow see that these are opportunities to make advancement in spiritual life. The story of King Yayati is quite interesting. He appears to be quite degraded in his activities in devotional service. He becomes overwhelmed with infatuation with promiscuity, even within the marriage. And he looks like someone who is just an ordinary person. But somehow or other, he goes through all of that. He purifies himself. He finally wakes up to it and establishes himself nicely in devotional service. So sometimes we see that that these tendencies that we carry in our devotional service reappear. Our material tendencies reappear and faced with that challenge again. But then again, what is the basis for the success? Sadhu Sangha. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastri Hoy Lavamatta. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoy. The association of devotees are so powerful, especially those who are fixed in devotional service. That is the basis for the success in our execution of devotional service. So we might find now we're somewhat in a limited situation where the association is not as readily as it used to be a few years ago. Although things are changing and it appears to be more readily now, but still we can take every opportunity to associate with engage in devotional service. This is the success of our movement, is our association with each other. That's that inspiration that comes with association keeps devotees moving seriously in devotional service. So we always look for opportunities to associate, especially with devotees who are fixed in the classes of Krishna consciousness. Okay, we could speak a lot more about marriage and the anomalies or the challenges that marriage presents, and you see it on the secular level. There are so many material reasons why a marriage will fall apart, but there are no spiritual reasons. There actually could be a spiritual reason, but that spiritual reason is that someone is no longer interested in devotional service. But from the spiritual point of view, there are always solutions to problems that occur within relationships. And one has to find those solutions through Shastra and Guru, try to understand it and get the understanding of how to apply that. It's something we have to work on. And this is the basic principle of life, is relationships. The whole basis of life is relationships. Krishna consciousness means establishing relationships with Krishna in a favorable way, serving Krishna in order to please Krishna. So the same principle for relationship is the foundation for our day-to-day relationships on different levels also. The mood of service and the mood of trying to please in that mood of service. All right, so we are about 7:45, and we have, perhaps we can open it up for questions or comments.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Accept our obeisances, Prabhupada. How are you?
Adi Purusha, Hare Krishna, my obeisances.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you also.
We remember kind of a humor. You've made the point perfectly that if people aren't on the same page, it's difficult to have a peaceful relationship.
Harmonious.
Right? Yeah. And how the wife is influencing the husband is influencing the wife. We had we shared this before, kind of a hilarious story. I remember 1974, Kaladri was doing a marriage at New Vrindavan, and I just arrived there practically a week before, and then I had very little understanding of Krishna consciousness. So I was curious, well, what's marriage like in Krishna consciousness? So he said to the two potentially married couple, he said, "So you love each other?" And he said, "Yeah." He said, "And you want that love to grow and grow and grow, right?" Yeah. They're very sweet young kids, young couple. He said, "Well, you have two choices. If you encourage each other in good sadhana, chanting your rounds nicely, coming to the morning program, coming to class, if you encourage each other in faith in your spiritual master, if the focus of your desire is to please Krishna, like you were saying, and engage in devotional service, you'll help each other. You'll actually serve each other, not just you materially, but you'll help each other go forward in Krishna consciousness, and your love will grow and grow. But the other choice is, if all you do is quote unquote serve each other by facilitating your sensuality experience, then gradually you lose respect for each other. You lose respect for yourself. You'll fight like talk cats and dogs, and you'll be miserable. Okay, let's have the marriage. I was like, wow. He just said, you've got two choices, encourage each other in sense gratification, or encourage each other in devotional service, like a three-legged race. If you're not really in step, it just becomes very awkward.
Mm-hmm. I guess that was one of the better, speeches before marriage. That was we don't usually give those kind of introductions to married life. We think, everybody is so happy and there's big smiles and here we go.
And they live happily ever after.
Devotion, like you made the point perfectly. Devotional service is the life of the soul. It's what is our relationship? We're serving Krishna together. That's our relationship. And then the focus is not, and the Christians say, man and woman shouldn't walk toward each other. They'll just bump heads. They go like that. I'm going to make you the center of my life. No, I'm going to make you. But he said, if you, instead of walking toward each other, you can walk hand in hand toward God forever. That you change the direction of your endeavor.
Yeah. As we develop that relationship with Krishna through our bhakti, through our service, that automatically connects with that relationship with the other person, because everyone's connected to Krishna. Sometimes we say marriage is we call it the third partner.
Right.
Third partner is Krishna. In other words, we should live by religious principles as the way to manage the affairs of the marriage and engage in devotional service also. So we have to consider also the day-to-day activities should be governed by religious principles and not mundane likes and dislikes.
Therefore, the connection with the spiritual master is vital.
Yeah.
You just have guru in a box, guru at a distance. Here's my toaster. Here's my cell phone. Here's my guru. Haribo. Just let the guru in once in a while. Keep him at a distance so he doesn't ask you to do anything. But the devotees are dedicated. They're dedicated. The spiritual master, Krishna, is in the center, and helping to push on Lord Chaitanya's movement is our focus of our sincere endeavor.
Seeing Krishna within the heart of every living entity is also the foundation for acting in a devotional way, at least theoretically. We may not come to the platform of realizing it, but every living entity is situated in internal relationship with Krishna, and Krishna sits in the heart of every living entity. So by serving that living entity in devotional service, we're also serving Krishna also.
Nice.
Thank you, Mari.
Anybody else? We like to hear everybody's voice. Angel.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hi. I was trying to look at the chapter where in Srila's Prabhupada.
We lost your volume for a minute there.
You're still you're okay. You got muted, Angel. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, I actually remember reading in Srila's Prabhupada biography, the first one, the first volume, where he was interesting in someone else, and his father and his mother had already arranged a marriage, and his father had a talk with him, and he said, maybe it's best that you're not so attractive to this woman so that you don't lose yourself through your senses and you have a bigger purpose. Now it'll be easier for you to when you finish I guess raising your family and everything, it'll be easier for you to take Krishna consciousness elsewhere. And it was just interesting how Srila Prabhupada was able to, even though he understood the whole concept of what was marriage in reality, he still respected our normal traditions out here in the city, and was still open to make adjustments and everything else. So thank you for the beautiful story, and thank you for the sharings, and I think that Krishna is the act of service. So whenever we see another being or God's child, we have to remember that he lives in that heart, and the only way to serve him is through the act of service, kindness, love, compassion, empathy. And I think that the one important thing is acknowledgement and communication, how we use our tone, how we use our voice, eye engagement.
You said it, communication. That's the key to everything else you said.
Thank you so much for this beautiful class. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Hare
Angel. Hare Krishna. Okay. Someone else?
Mars, there's a story about you serving Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada came to the airport in Vrindavan in 1974, and everyone cooked, and they made this gigantic platter with all these samosas and kachoris and everything, and all these sweets. And Mars used to make this para, a little round milk sweet like a silver dollar with sugar on the outside. And he had made the para, and he was cooking with a wood fire, so the para became like kind of brown, and it had wood smoke. So he stayed up late at night and made another batch of para, because this was for Srila Prabhupada at the airport. So I was in the kitchen, and Radhanath Swami came in. He said, "Where's the para?" I don't even know what para is. And he picked up this stainless steel bowl, and there was some para there. So he put it in his shoulder bag and went running down the hill, and then went to the airport. And then Chandramauli came in. What did this? That's the wrong para. He was really upset with me and chastised me for my foolishness. I had no what idea I was doing. So they brought all this huge plate of prasadam, to the airport. And Srila Prabhupada put his hand over the plate. There were like 100 different preparations, and he took the para. And he didn't just take a little bite. He ate the whole para. And then he put his hand over the plate, and he took another para. And he ate the whole one. And he took another one. He ate 3 para, and he didn't eat anything else on the whole plate. And when he came back to the farm, and everybody said, "Well, how is it? And everybody told the story about how the only thing Prabhupada ate was the para that Chandramauli Maharaj cooked.
Radhanath Swami discovered this. I would have gave him the other batch.
Right. I got the hot sauce for that. Okay, anyway, Krishna's
apologize.
appreciating the consciousness of the cook, the love, the sincerity, and Srila Prabhupada showed us that this is an extraordinary devotee.
Well, I have to apologize for giving you the sauce.
I deserve it. I deserve a lot worse. I've got a lot of sauce from you over the years. My goodness. We have kind of a fiery relationship.
Well, anyway, I'm cooled down a lot.
I apologize for my offenses. Please forgive me. I said to Radhanath Swami a few years ago, Maharaj, please forgive my offenses. He said, "What, like this? All forgiven." So kind.
I don't think you can commit offenses.
I used to work with the farm on making the fences for the cows, and people would say, "What's your service?" I'd say, "I make fences." Okay, of course, Prabhupada, I have to go. Thank you, Maharaj. We love you.
Haribo, Adi, my obeisances. Nice to see you again. Thank you for. Okay.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. We see we have almost 40 participants. We're breaking the bank here. I wonder why is that? Is that because people are inspired by your prison preaching? Is that so? Prison background devotees tuning in. Can you tell us a little more about your service as a prison minister? How you got involved with that, and what your realizations are, what that service is like?
Well, it's both a very difficult service in the sense that we do programs in the prisons and we arrange these things with the authorities. Depending on what country it is, it becomes very difficult or not so difficult to get in. But once we get in and we give classes to some group of inmates who come, we get challenged a lot in our presentation. There are inmates have this, I don't know, attitude of wanting to disbelieve whatever you say. When you're giving a class to the devotees are rooting for you, saying, we want to hear the best class, and they only want they want everything positive. But somehow, I've been into many prisons where they look for something that doesn't sound right with them, and that's easy for them to find, and then they challenge that. But you'll see there's always one or two people in every group that is really interested and just absorbs everything, comes up and talks to you later, and then we give them a book, or we give them some more information on chanting. So it's very rewarding in that sense, because these inmates are pretty much neglected in a general sense, even by their relatives and friends. And so they don't get much attention other than what they experience inside the jails, and which is not always pleasant. So we find that when someone does take the Krishna consciousness and has some interest, it's so satisfying to see that. And we can understand the power of Srila Prabhupada's books, which really are the foundation for to open the door to these people. Because as soon as they come in contact with Prabhupada's books and they start reading seriously, their whole life changes. So I think we do two things. Actually, we do more than two things, but two of the things we do is, one is that we write letters, we send in books, and whenever the opportunity is allowable, not always the prisons are like that, we go in and do programs. When this, just before the lockdown came in March of 2020, we were on a roll in London, in UK, not in London, but in the whole United Kingdom. We were doing place after place after place. We were getting books in. We were having 2 programs a day with inmates. And then everything kind of shut down because of the the epidemic at the time. So yeah, but it's very satisfying because you see how much people change. Although sometimes we find we have to stay with them until they get to a certain stage of commitment, and then things just take off because they don't have the association. Their association is usually the opposite. So it's a great challenge to keep people focused in Krishna consciousness. And we have some outstanding devotees who are now practicing in prisons or very serious, chanting more than 16 rounds a day, and also preaching to their fellow inmates and doing their own little satsang within the prisons. So that's very satisfying and very inspiring when we see them start organizing within the jails itself.
Wonderful, Maharaj, wonderful service. And are those devotees, they became devotees in prison, or they were devotees and then somehow or other they ended up there and continued their practice?
Very few were devotees before and then went in. It's mostly bringing Srila Prabhupada's books in. We get them into the libraries, or we convince the chaplain to allow the books to come in, and somehow, as soon as they come in contact with Srila Prabhupada's books, everything changes. That's the changing point is Srila Prabhupada's books. So we want to get more and more books in, and we're doing that now. Sometimes we send in like one title of everything that Srila Prabhupada authored into the libraries, and then they have access to the libraries.
Great, wonderful, Maharaj. Okay, devotees, do we have any realizations that anyone would like to share with us, or a question?
I also did a second book on prison preaching. I'll hold it up so we can see if you can see it. It's called Forbidden Voices. There's a picture of Radha Manohar from Montreal there. And below it is a jail. It says Forbidden Voices. And this particular book is mostly coming from the inmates. It's all about them. It's their realizations, their artwork, which is quite amazing in some cases, poetry, glorifications of Srila Prabhupada, their talks about their practice in devotional service. All that's in this second volume.
And how do we get in touch with you, or how do we get the book? Is it on Amazon, or what's the best way to purchase?
There is a devotee in the UK who's working on a whole system of networking and getting the books out. I could send you his, I can send it to you, and then maybe you can make it available. His email address, and then from there you just write him, and then he'll arrange for you to get the book, or anyone.
Yes, Maharaj. Yes.
We're still trying to put it out in different places. I travel around the US now, and I've been carrying the books with me, and I've been bringing them to different programs. So that's one way. Unfortunately, we went through 60 books in about 2 weeks, and we have 3 books left.
Wow. I'm sure those testimonies and stories are far out. It's a good read.
There's nothing like you've ever read before.
Yeah. Cool.
And then, they're very sincere. We have some amazing, amazing transformations in some of these persons. How I can give you one little story where there was one gang member. He had committed 8 murders. And he was in a gang in Los Angeles. So he wound up in jail for life. And he's quite a, what you might say, heavy personality. So he took initiation from one wonderful spiritual master, Vaisheshika, and Vaisheshika was preaching to him, and then I was also writing him. And then he started reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. He got the whole book of CC there. And after a few years, his whole nature completely changed. One day when he was outside, they have a chance to go outside and exercise. They call it the yard. One person came up to him and asked him if his name and said, "Is this your name?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, well, you killed my best friend." And then he attacked him. So this devotee normally would have just, fought back and probably would have killed him. But he didn't. After coming in contact, as he said, with Lord Nityananda's mercy, he simply got the person down so that until the guards came and took him away, he didn't hurt him at all. So he didn't try in any way to respond in a violent way in being attacked. And this was completely contrary to his previous nature. So he surprised himself when he did that. And he said, this must be due to Lord Nityananda's mercy. Otherwise, it's impossible for me to respond like that. So that's an interesting story. He describes it.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you, Marge. Thanks for sharing. It's 8:07. We are wrapping up here. Thank you very much, Maharaj, for taking your time to give us your Sangha, and wishing everybody a wonderful day in Krishna consciousness. And conflicts are coming from Krishna. They're not coming from, like Maharaj said, not from this person or that person. It's from Krishna for us to deepen our relationship, as Maharaj said. So let's deepen our relationship with each other and with Krishna. And see you everyone tomorrow. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. My obeisances. Vanchakalpa Tarubhasya, Kripa Sindhu Bevacha, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo, Namaho Namaha, Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai.
Thank you, Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.